Okay, so let's now go ahead and add the ability for a user to change their password. So we're going to go back to creating a view with a form, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to create two routes, one for the get, which is be the form that's displayed, and then the post as well. And we'll name both these routes, add it to the navigation, do the validation, and change the password. So we're sort of repeating what we've done before, but we are going to introduce some slightly new functionality into this as well, such as checking password hashes and things like that. And obviously what we'll be doing is updating the user table again, basically. So we'll be finding the specific user, updating their details and saving them, redirecting. What we can also look at in here as well is the fact that if we're logged out, we could redirect the user, say, to or specify in the URL that we want to access the change password URL. So we might want to say change password here. If we were signed, it would be account change password. So if we were signed out, this would then redirect us to our signed in page, or our sign in page, this page here. Then when we sign in, remember we had that intended method that we were speaking about earlier that we changed everything around for. When we sign in, we'll then be directed to the intended page, which is the change password page. So we'll actually see this functionality working as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and sign in to the account that we've already created, and we'll go ahead and we'll add a navigation item in here for the changing of password. So let's just duplicate this to save a little bit of time, and we'll go ahead and get rid of this because we don't have a root yet. We'll go over roots in just a moment, and we want this to be changed password. So let's take a look at that, and that gives us a new menu item. Obviously it doesn't go anywhere at the moment, but we need to go ahead and create our roots. So we're going to do everything within our authenticated group because the user needs to be authenticated before they actually, change their password. So let's go ahead and add a new item in here, a new root. What we're also going to need to do in a moment as well is create cross-site request forgery protection group within here as well. So this is going to be the change password get root. So it will be root get. And remember, we're going to have this as account change hyphen password. We're then going to pass an array into this with a name for this root, so account change hyphen password. And then we also want to say it uses, and this will be the name of the method within the account controller. So this is going to be get change password in camel caps. So we're going to do exactly the same thing here for the change password get, so when the form is actually submitted. But let's go ahead and actually build the form first of all. So let's go ahead and create a new new view, sorry. So in account, let's say password.blade.php, and let's go ahead and extend the main layout and provide a content yield for this. So this is change password. Let's go and make sure this works. So at the moment we don't have any URL to our controller, or our root, sorry. So we'll say URL root account change password. Okay, so now this should redirect us to our change password page. Oops, get change password. Of course, so we don't actually have our controller in here. So let's go ahead and build our controller method, sorry. So get change password. We've already created the view, so we just want to return view make account.password, which is the view we have here. And let's go ahead and refresh, and there we go. So we get the change password text here. So we want to go ahead and build our form, but we need a route that allows us to actually submit to a specific place. And we're going to need this to be cross-site request forgery protected. So let's go ahead and create a group. Like we did down in the unauthenticated group, we created a cross-site request forgery protection group. We're going to do the same thing here. So the group is going to be oops, sorry, an array, and this is going to be before the request is sent to the root. We want to cross-site request forgery protect. So we then use a closure to define all of the others, all of the other roots. And in this case, we just want the change password root, but we want this to be the post. So when we actually post the form, so let's append post onto there and change this to post change password, and obviously change this to post as well. So we've now got our get change password and our post change password, so both the ability to view the form and then actually submit the form. So let's go ahead now and actually build our form up. So the method is obviously going to be post. The action is going to be URL root account change password post. And let's go ahead and again look at the cross-site request forgery protection, extremely important. So the input type here is just going to be submit. We'll just create the button for now. That's all we need to test the cross-site request forgery protection. So I'm going to say change password. And obviously if we were to go ahead and submit this now, we get the token mismatch exception. Perfect, because no token has been submitted. So let's now introduce a form token into this, which should generate, if we inspect this, the hidden token. When we click submit, post change password does not exist. That's fine. We know that the method within our account controller for post doesn't exist. We can go ahead and create that now. So post change password. So that works now. If we refresh and resend the data, perfect. So we now know that the cross-site request forgery protection works. Let's just to be double sure modify this token. And there we go, so we get a token mismatch. Perfect. So what we can now go ahead and do is build the rest of our form and then actually submit this to our post change password method, and then we can go ahead and actually get the user's password changed, redirecting them and letting them know that it's worked. So within our account controller, within our change password view, we want to go ahead and build up all of our fields. So div class equals field. I'll just enter field there. Okay, so within this, we need three things. We need three fields altogether. The old password, which is going to be an input type of password, and the name of this is going to be old password. And yeah, that's all we need for now. We'll obviously be validating it, but we'll deal with that afterwards. We need a new password, which we're just going to call password, and then we need a new password again, which we're going to be calling password again. So now that we've got all the fields that we require, let's take a look at what that looks like in the browser. Cool, so we've got old password, new password, and password again. Let's take a look at, or have a think about, what kind of validation options we need here. Old password is going to need to actually match the current user's password. New password can be anything, but it has to be greater than, I think we defined 6 characters. So let's just take a look at the rules that we define when a user's creating an account. So we said a minimum of 6 characters there. And back to our form, and the new password again has to match the new password. That's really all we need there, and obviously that's required. So all 3 fields are required here. So now let's go ahead and actually kick the validation process off within our account controller. So if we go down to post change password, once everything's submitted to here via post, we want to go ahead and create a validator variable, and that's going to be the validator. We're going to use the make method, and we're going to say get all of the input, or take all of the input, and we want to pass an array here. So let's again just pull this down, just make it a little bit easier to read. Okay, so we have old password, or was it password old? Let's take a look here. Old password, yeah, that's fine. So old password. We had password, and we had password again. So as we mentioned, all fields are required, so let's go ahead and fill in the fact that all of them are required. Old password must match the current password, but we'll take that into account in a completely separate check. We won't do that with the validator. We'll handle that otherwise, because we need to do a hash check. We need to use the check method on the hash object to be able to do that, or the helper if you like. So the new password must be a minimum of 6 characters, and the password again must be the same as password, so like we did when we created a user. So what we now want to do is we want to go ahead and again check if this validator has failed or not. So if validator fails, then we want to redirect. Otherwise, we want to change password. So let's handle the redirect and the passing of all the errors to the view, and then we'll go ahead and output them in the view and get that over and done with. So we want to go ahead and redirect to a specific route, and that route is obviously account change password, and we want to do that with errors validator. Now previously we've done with input, but we're not actually going to do that here. We're not going to use this method, and the reason being is that we actually don't need to output the password in the field again. We're just going to blank them, so we don't actually need to pass any of the old input through to that view when we redirect. So redirecting to this with the errors is good enough for now. So let's go over to here and let's go ahead and create our if statements that we should be used to by now, checking if errors has old password. We want to go ahead and output errors first old password, and we want to do this for all of the fields. So the same here, which is just password, and we want to do the same here as well, which is password again. And there we are. So we've now created our validation. Let's go ahead and check that this all works. So I'm going to hit change password, and you see we get all of the messages here saying that everything's required. Let's go ahead and enter, say, password in here, password 1 in here, and password 2 in here. There we go, password again, and password must match. So we know that this all works now. The next thing to focus on is when we actually go ahead and we validated everything in terms of the fields. We want to go ahead and first of all get the user. We want to grab the old password and the password from the form fields using input get. Then we want to check the hash against the current user's password. And if that matches, so if the old password provided matches the current user's password, then we can go ahead and change the password and save the user details and redirect the user on. We also want to down here provide a fallback, as we've been doing in most places. So the fallback is if everything on this goes wrong, is we want to redirect to account change password with global your password could not be changed. So just a sort of generic error. Okay, so like I said, we need to grab the current user, and we can do that by applying this to a variable. So we're going to store this in a variable. We're going to use user find, so the find method on Eloquent using the user model. This will pluck data from our users table, remember? And in here, we're going to provide the author user ID. So now that we've selected the current user, we know that this user is currently logged in, so we don't need to check if this user exists because it's protected by authentication. Let's go and store some of the variables that we need. So old password is going to be input get old password, so that's just coming from the form, and let's duplicate this down and also supply Let's line these all up as well. Also supply the new password that's required to change. So this is the user's old password as they're telling us. So this is what the user's telling us that their old password is, and this is telling us what the password they want to be changed to is. So we now need to provide an if or a check to see if the old password actually matches the current user's password. So we say hash check to use the check method on the hash model, and we pass in one password and the next password. And to do this, we use a method that's already been defined called getAuthPassword, and that's defined within the user model by default in Laravel. If we scroll down, you can see this method here, getAuthPassword, and that just returns the user's password. Get the password for the user. It's written here in plain text. So what we can now do is say user getAuthPassword, and that's a method, so remember the brackets. So basically this means password user provided matches. That is basically what that means. So if that's the case, what we then want to do is go ahead and update the user's details with a new password. So we want to say user password equals, remember this is the name of the field that we want to update within our database table, and we want to set that to hash make password. So this now is the password they want to change to, but we obviously need to hash it to a 60-character hash. Then we go ahead and say if user save. So this method here will actually save this detail, so this will save the new password to the database, and then we go ahead and redirect. So everything's successful, we can redirect to a route, and this route is home. So we're going to redirect the user back to the home page, and we're going to say with a global message, and this global message is going to be your password has been changed. And there we are. So let's just run through this again, just very, very quickly. If all of the validation passes, we've seen this a million times before, we grab the current user using the find method. This is basically grabs the user ID. We say the old password we get from the user's input, we get the new password. We check if the password supplied by the user in here actually matches their current password that they're using the check method on the hash model. And then we, or the hash helper, then we go ahead and set the new password, hashing the password as we go. We save the user's details and we redirect them to the home page. So let's go ahead and check this out. I'm going to provide an incorrect password in here and two new passwords in here. And click change password. Your password could not be changed. So basically that did not match. You could provide a more a nicer message. For example, what we could do is we could say else exactly the same here. So we're saying if the hash check is successful, otherwise we want to return to account password changed, your old password is incorrect, for example. That would provide a more accurate analysis of what's gone wrong here. So let's just type in a password here correctly, change password, your old password is incorrect. So that provides a sort of more accurate what's going on. So I'm now going to type in my old password correctly, which is just password, and I'm going to type in my new password, which I'm going to say password 1, change password. In fact, let me make a mistake of doing this differently. The password again and password must match. So yeah, just double checking validation. Password 1. So my old password is password, my new password is password 1, and my new password again is password 1. Change password, redirected to the home page, your password has been changed. Let's check the value here, this will change. There we are, so that's changed. I'm now going to go ahead and sign out and sign back in. I'm going to try and use my old password, which is just password, doesn't work. I'm going to try it again with my new password that I've just changed it to, and it works, and I'm signed in, and I can go ahead and change it again if I really, really wanted to. So that's how we create a form to allow our user to change their password.